Welcome back. In the last video, we had a quick look in orientation to how the program Veusz looks. We saw the different windows and the different buttons that we would be interacting with. However, we haven't really started to use it. And the first step to using Veusz is to get the data into it. There's a few different ways that one can do this, but I think the easiest way to do it is to keep the data that you want as a .csv or a comma-separated variable format, and then to just import that into Veusz. Veusz will read from that file, and if we change it, it will automatically update the values that we have. And so let's just have a look quickly at how we can generate these .csv files, how we can import them into Veusz. As a reminder, this is what Veusz looks like when we open it. This is where we left last time. We had changed the size of this plot, and so it might be a little different than when you opened it. We'd also added this console window and placed the formatting window in front of the data window. Nevertheless, all those windows, you should know where they are, and we will now see how to use at least the data window once we've imported into Veusz. What we need first is data. The first thing we're going to make in Veusz is a bar chart. So why don't we just work with the data that we had before when we made a bar chart in Excel. This is what that file looked like. We had made a bar chart of degrees post-high school, and we had counted the number of people based off of a US census. We want to continue to use that data, but use it to make a Veusz bar chart, or a bar chart in Veusz. What Veusz is going to do is it's going to read everything that we give it in a file. We actually only need something like the names of the things we want and then what we want to plot, like people, fraction, or percentage. And so let's just keep this only. So I think what we want to do is go ahead and delete everything that's not that. So I'm just going to click on here and press delete. I am also going to select all of the data here that we don't want. And there's a few things that one could do. You could also just press the delete button and that'll get rid of it, but leave some of the formatting. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. The other thing you could do is while it's all selected, I could right click and say delete. And now what it's done is instead of deleting the content of the cell, it's actually deleted all of the cells that used to be there and moved everything over to the left. You can now see that we have reference errors because the data is gone. So we should not have done that, at least not yet. The reason we have reference errors, if you remember, is that each one of these cells is some sort of formula. And so we need to not have formulas that reference the data that we're going to be getting rid of. I think the easiest way to do that is to just go ahead and select everything we want, say copy. I'm going to paste it at the top. And then I can say paste. Right click, paste, but instead of just clicking paste, I can say paste special, and under paste special, I can say just the values. Now what I have are the same numbers without the formula. Before, I had this by basically adding together a few numbers, one of which was over here. Now when I click on this exact same number, it's just the number. So we have gotten rid of the formulas. I'm going to press undo just so you can see another way to do this. If I have all of this highlighted and copied, I can also go ahead and paste. When I do that, you can see it's thrown reference errors because I have moved the reference to a cell that no longer contains the data that I want. However, before I click on anything else, at the bottom of where I've pasted, there's a clipboard. And if I click on paste options, I can also say values only. So there's two different ways to get just the numbers I want without the formulas. Now I don't need any of the other data. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, which we don't want, by pressing delete. And then I am going to use the same thing we did before. I'm going to click on a row to highlight it, hold shift and click on another row to highlight it and everything in between the first row. Then I'm going to right click and say delete to get rid of all of those columns. Now I have the data I want. I basically have degrees post high school, and then I have what we were plotting before. I have the numbers I'm interested in terms of people, fraction, and percentages. This is still in an Excel style file, and it's not what we want. Instead, what we want is we want to save this, and there's two different ways that we can do it. We can say save a copy if you're on a Mac, Or if you're on a Windows, it might say Save As. Either one will open up a dialog. Under this dialog, we want to navigate to where we would like this file to be. I'm just going to save it in downloads because that's something that's easy for us to access later. You should put it somewhere better in your own file system. What we don't want is XLSX. That is the proprietary Excel formatting. And while you could write a Python script to read this into Veusz, it is not the default behavior that it can read it. So instead, as I said, we need a comma separated variable file. So I will click on here, and now the file format is comma separated variable. This says bar chart data. I think that's fine. I will say save. Excel will give you a warning that basically says that it can't save all the fancy formatting and things like that that would have been in the Excel document, and that's fine. The CSV doesn't recognize formulas or anything like that. It's just a series of values separated by commas, as we're about to see. If I go to my browser, into my downloads, here's the file that I've just saved. If I double click on it, it will open it up in Excel because my computer is set to open up these as a default in Excel. But I could also right click and say open with in some other program. So let's just go to text edit, which is a text reader. And all I want to show you here is that this has been formatted such that I have degrees post high school, comma, people, comma, fraction, comma, percentage. And you'll see that I have degrees post high school, people, fraction, percentage. And so the commas are separating each value in a row. Next is none 11 4 308, and you'll see none 11 4 308. And so the comma separated variable is just a way for us to represent different values row by row. This is a format that Veusz can read. So let's go ahead and look at that. If we go back to Veusz and we want to now import the data that we had, we can use this button here. This button says import data into Veusz. If I click on it, it will open up a dialog that has a lot of different options. But for us, basically, the important things are that I have this highlighted CSV. There's like 2D, ND, HDF5, standard, so many different ways to represent data, including selecting plugins that would allow us to read things like Excel files. However, we're going to stick with the CSV because that's the format that we've just saved. Right now you can see there's a lot of data here, and that's because it's pointing at a CSV file that I had used previously on my computer. We want the one that we have just created though. So let's just go to downloads, and there's my bar chart for data. If I double click on this, then now what we see is degrees, people, fraction, percentage. There was this like row up top, and the row up top is empty because if we go back, there was a blank row at the top that was just commas. And that's what is happening here. We didn't see it in Excel, and sometimes things like this can happen in Excel. And so you have a couple options. One is to just come in and manually edit this. I could say, go ahead and delete all of these and save, close this. Now if I browse and double click on this, I no longer have that issue. As long as your headers, meaning the names of the stuff that in your column, are in the very top row, Veusz handles this very well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now that everything is ready to go, I will say import, and it gives me a summary. We imported 4 data sets. There were 4 columns, so that's great. One is a column called degrees post high school, and it has 25 entries, a fraction that has 6, people that have 6, and percentage that has 6. And you might be thinking, well, when I look back at the Excel, don't they all just have 6? But then of course there might have been values here before that Excel can remember. And so if we wanted to change that, the easiest thing to do is to again go in to your favorite text editor. I'm using text edit. You could use Notepad in Windows and delete all of these blank lines. Again, it's not strictly necessary. I'm just trying to show you how Veusz is interpreting what it sees here. Then we can go back. I could try to browse and do all of this if I wanted, but instead I'm going to close this and use this green arrow that says reload linked datasets. We've already loaded this dataset once, so now this just reloads it, and it'll give you another summary. Now degrees post high school is only a length of 6. There's 6 entries. We got rid of the extra ones. And then there's also 6 entries for fraction, people, and percentage. So we have just reloaded this. That's great. Under data, in this data window, not the formatting window, but the data window, we now see this data. Bar chart data.csv. So it's telling me it comes from this file, and in fact it's even telling me where that file is located in my downloads folder. Then it's saying I have fraction, people, and percentage, that they have 6 entries, that the first one is just text and the other is 1D, meaning it's just a series of simple numbers. If I wanted to see what these were, I could go in and I could right click, and then I could say edit data, and then it would give me an editor where I could see what each one of these is. We're not going to edit anything in here, but it does exist in case you want to inspect the data that you have. And then we're ready to do something like make a bar chart with this data. And that's what we're going to do in the next video, is we're going to take the data that we've just imported, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a bar chart out of it and explore a few of the design parameters that we have control over for the bar chart. So until then, enjoy practicing importing data into Veusz.